Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Tales of the Walking Dead. Great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I'm really surprised by, because I obviously didn't know, because obviously I saw some bits and pieces of the episodes during promos, but I didn't know whose episodes or what episode. I didn't know this was the Terry Crews and Olivia Munn episodes. I also didn't know those episodes were together, because I saw, the title of the episodes, Evie, was it semicolon Joe? I was thinking going into this, half the episode is going to be about Evie's story and the other half is going to be about Joe. It's like, oh no, they're pairing together. I was like, oh, and I really like that. And it's so interesting, first and foremost, finding out, because I was wondering, when it came to this series, what the time frame was going to be. I figured it was going to be all over the place, and it seems like it's going to be, potentially. This show seems like it's taking place, time frame wise, maybe around the time of the first season of The Walking Dead, maybe even the second season, because the fall, as they kind of refer to it as in World Beyond, happened only a year ago. So this is super early on in that. And we meet, Terry Crews' character of Joe, who is a doomsday prepper. So they were he kind of cut himself off from the rest of life because he's like, hey, I know the world's coming to an end. No one else is seeing it. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Turns out, hey, just because you might seem paranoid and crazy doesn't mean you're wrong. And yeah, he was prepared for it. And he does seem like he's one of those, at first I was wondering if he was one of those football players that's kind of obsessed with his glory, but it's no, he's obsessed with a certain team, which, if I'm not mistaken, it feels very befitting, because wasn't Terry Crews a football player? If I remember correctly? So it felt very befitting for that to be the story. And him spending time with Gilligan, which immediately the moment they're introducing Gilligan, I'm like, don't do it. I was like, please don't do it. Please don't do it. And they did it. They killed Gilligan. I was like, no. I was like, why do you do this to me, Walking Dead? I was like, please don't do that. That's heartbreaking. I was like, that was his own, because he's cut himself off from the rest of the world. He's watching his games. He's doing puzzles to keep his mind sharp. He's working out. And it's Gilligan's all the company he has. That was his best friend, and you took him from. It's Jesus, every show's done it now. We've seen best friends get killed in every show now. We've seen it in the OG Walking Dead. We've seen it in Fear the Walking Dead. And we've even seen it now in this. It's all three of these shows. I think the only one that didn't have that was, World Beyond is the only one that didn't have best friend pet die. So that really, but still 3 out of 4. Come on, man, that sucks. But the whole thing kind of got Joe inspired to he's kind of left here alone, and he doesn't have Gilligan to balance things out. So that solitude got to him. So he looked up some chat messages with someone that he was talking to at the time before everything went sideways, called You Should Be Scared. So he decides, looking through their conversation, he's going to find her. And I think that's such an interesting thing about this series, too. And I didn't even think that this would be something they can do, but they're playing with the genre in so many ways. This episode is so lighthearted. That's what also, The Walking Dead is one of those shows, I enjoy it, but it's depressing. It's super depressing, because you're always just worried, man, who's gonna die? Which character am I attached to that's gonna bite it this day? Is someone gonna kill them? They're gonna get killed by a walker? What's gonna happen? So it's one of those episodes you have to kind of take in stride. You're I need to watch it and something else to kind of cleanse my palate, just because it's depressing and bleak to some extent. Yes, there's hopefulness to it, but it's still just a depressing show. All of them are. So that's always my reservation. So this episode having a lighthearted tone and feel to it was kind of interesting to me. Because it is an anthology, you don't have to probably always keep that consistent tone. All the shows have pretty much the same tone. Yeah, they have some lightheartedness to it, but this was a fairly lighthearted episode. It was this is a story that if you took it out, it'd be an interesting rom-com story to some extent. If you took it out, you just slap a rom-com genre in a post-apocalyptic situation. And I think that's such an interesting thing. Having not seen the rest of the episodes, at the time of me recording this, obviously all 6 episodes are out. I didn't realize it was only going to be 6 episodes. Either way. But each episode and each story could kind of be its own thing. It doesn't have to be dark and bleak. Yes, Gilligan dying sucked ass. But there's also a levity to this episode. He's going on his journey. He's I'm going to find love. Which, that's been a through line in the Walking Dead shows where, you're searching for you're doing what you're doing for love, you know? So it's like, whether it's like familial love, whether it's relationship love, granted that hasn't always worked out, especially the way things gonna play out in this episode, but we'll get to that. So him, like, on his journey to find You Should Be Scared, gets trapped by Evie's trap, and she's like it's the interesting juxtaposition of personalities. He's the very like, oh, I'm a prepper, I'm all about being prepared, and he's with someone that's super laissez-faire. Like, she's the hippie person, and she's like, oh, I'm trying to find someone, so I'm basically going to take you hostage, and you're going to be kind of my chauffeur as I'm trying to get to where I'm going. So they're in this together. And it's this thing where it's like, she's so laissez-faire that she wants to have a conversation with him. He's like, I need to concentrate on P. And then she wants to keep talking. And then, like, he puts his headphones in just to not listen to her. It's like, this is kind of a hostage situation. But even then, at certain moments, I kept being like, he could have, I mean, I guess it's like, right, you don't want to take the chance the gun might go off and you might get surrounded by walkers. Or she calls them, what were they, what she called them? She called them like toast something. I'm like, always, once again, everyone's got their names for them. But she, like, there's so many moments you're like, he could have grabbed the gun or at least like knocked her out or done something to take advantage of the situation, but he never did. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, because there were moments she put the gun down too that he could have taken advantage of, and I think that speaks volume to a conversation they have later on about, like, you had multiple opportunities and you never took it. So, and she's very much like, oh my God, look at this sunset, it's beautiful, you know, it's magical, which he's like, no, there's no magic in the world. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you got a gun on me, and we just walked by 2 dead bodies with maggots in there. Well, we walked past 2, like, Walking Dead with maggots in their faces. And he's like, right, I'm sorry for kind of being a downer. The fact is that, yes, there is still beauty in this world. And like I said, I think that's kind of that interesting juxtaposition where she's a little more optimistic, where he is more pessimistic. It's like, it's the Odd Couple type of situation, and in more ways than one. And obviously she doesn't 100% trust him, and obviously he doesn't trust her. And so she ends up reading through, like, the messages he had with You Should Be Scared. And she does apologize, like, oh, sorry, I kind of went through that. And so they ultimately do work together as a team when she ends up pulling off. Like, when she starts kicking and stuff, I was like, yo, okay. Because the only person I'm aware of that really kind of, like, fights like that in his universe was, like, Jesus. I think he's the only person I know that was, like, very, like, could also do weapons, but also could do, like, the hand-to-hand stuff if it needed to be. Was it Krav Maga? No, it wasn't Krav Maga. It was, what was it? I'm blanking on it now. Capoeira. I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. I had to Google it because I remember she saying it was a Brazilian martial arts. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, oh, that's pretty dope. And it's like, yeah, she's pretty skilled. But then there was also like the storyline never really got an answer to this. I guess maybe it's just kind of a world thing of, like, and maybe there's something there that maybe that's like a detail in the Walking Dead universe that, like, I didn't click with. But not unless that has something to do with Susan later on. But there was that walker that was missing heart, and it's like, I hope that was after it died, that it's like, oh, went taking hearts. And I'm like, that's why I'm like, I don't know if that's, like, specifically, like, some Walking Dead lore that I should remember that might be kind of, like, acknowledging, or was that just kind of like, because it doesn't seem like it straight up, it doesn't seem like it's, well, it could be related to the Susan thing later on. So I don't know. But the fact is, they ended up bonding over this and ended up actually getting close afterwards. And it's like, right, she unhandcuffs him, and later on he's like, oh, do you want to drive? And she gets to drive, and it's like, yeah, like I said, it's like this, like, buddy road trip comedy that I really liked and thought was kind of pretty dope. It turns out, in actuality, they're actually heading in the same direction. They're actually going to be like 10 miles away. She's trying to find her husband, Steven, because, like, he's a very, like, what was it, like, some, like, what was it, arts and stuff therapy type of place that she met her husband. And whenever he hated someone or was pissed at him, his way of handling it was he was hate painting. He would paint the people he hated. And, you know, it's like, I don't think she ever saw it, but she was always worried, like, right, it would always make you feel a certain way if he ever painted me, if I ever thought about that, because it's like, right, if he was, it wasn't just like he hated someone, if he was angry at them, if he was disappointed in them. So it's like that can't be good for a relationship, always being worried like, oh, will I do something that'll eventually make my husband want to paint me? So she wants to track him down because they were in a bad place at the time of her, before everything went sideways. So he ended up moving to like this cabin, and he was going to make a series of paintings about her. So she's kind of scared, like, right, if I do go there, will I find a whole bunch of paintings of him, like, how much he hates me? And so at the same time, she's also going to help him find You Should Be Scared, because yeah, she's kind of like he's got something and someone to look forward to. Problem is, we never even got to find out, and I wonder if there's going to be any correlation. Because these episodes are at the very least appear to be very episodical, like, so there probably won't be any connections, but I'm curious, are we going to find out like some connective tissue that the person who stole his bike, will we find out there in a different episode? The fact is they left behind a lamb too. I'm like, what's the significance of that? Like, why even bother leaving that behind? I was like, I guess it was to distract him long enough to get on a bike, but still, I had a feeling where I'm like, you left the bike running, someone's going to steal it. Someone's going to steal it while you're talking to Evie, and it's like, yep, they did. And all they walked away with this is that lamb. Because also, like, his picture of Gilly was on that, too. It was a nice reminder. And, like, obviously they're pissed at each other about, like, yeah, things kind of turning out the way it did. And it's like, right, I had everything that I needed prepped on that bike. I was just so prepared. And because of you, it's like, why'd you leave the bike running? It's like, what about that, like, dead man switch or whatever? It's like, yeah, but it only works if the bike is off. It's like, well, why'd you left it running? I left for you! This is all your fault. The fact of the matter is, I'm kind of team Steve, like, you being you. Like, I understand why he's like, you're kind of so infuriating. And then she kind of rips into him about, right, you could have left at any point in time, because it turns out the gun wasn't even loaded. And she's like, you should have known the gun wasn't loaded. He was like, how was I supposed to know that? She's like, because I hate guns. I'm like, okay. It's like, yeah, she's kind of like a hippie-ish person, and she wouldn't be all about, I mean, I don't think that says anything, considering like it's the apocalypse. I mean, you still have knives and stuff, but I guess it's like, knives are one thing in the apocalypse, guns are another. But the whole situation of, yeah, you could have escaped at any point in time. You stayed because you were lonely. You have no one. You basically spent so long, being so right about, like, oh, everything's going to fall apart. You cut your life off. Like, you never even got an opportunity for your life to start, because you cut yourself off from the rest of the world, and you stayed like that. And this was supposed to be your chance to kind of finally start your life. It's like, yeah, so this is kind of all on you. So they both go their separate ways. She finds her husband's cabin, but sadly he's not there. But she is hopeful that he's still alive. And she looks at all the paintings of the people he hates, and then you see that beautiful drawing he did of her, and it's like, okay. It wasn't hate, it was love. She's like, I hope you are okay. And ultimately, your boy Joe meets You Should Be Scared, Susan. The moment he met her, though, I was like, something's off. There's going to be something off about this. I don't know. The moment she gave him the brownie, I'm like, are we going to find out it's cannibalism? Like, that's why I was trying to talk it back to, like, the heart thing. I was like, did she put the hearts in that? Like, what's up with that? So he's eating the brownies and stuff like that. He's enjoying it. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like, I was like, I was like, man, this situation feels weird. It feels weird. To be fair, it's like, we've seen time and time again in this universe, when you get close to someone in this universe, they always have a tendency to disappoint you, because people can suck. So the fact is that it's like, oh, like, once again, it's just happened too many times. It's like, no one is who you think they are. I mean, obviously most recently would be like the Eugene situation. That's super for him and Stephanie. It's like, oh, that wasn't what he thought it was, and that kind of blew up in his face. So I kind of figured it was going to be a similar thing here, and it kind of was. It didn't even cross my mind to think like, she laced the brownies. I didn't even think they were going to be laced, but that was interesting. And then she's like, so why are you here, Joe? Why'd you come find me? He's like, I wanted to be with you. She's like, no, you came to steal my place. So it's like, right, this world creates monsters of us all. So she got paranoid because people had come here before, which I was almost wondering, were we going to find out one of those people that came to visit her was going to be, Evie's husband, but they never really crossed that bridge, so I guess it wasn't. And so basically she's like, oh, I kind of had no choice. With Joe was like, oh, I get it. Like the guy was trying to come take your place. He's like, I get that. You had to protect what was yours. But then it's like, yeah. And so she got a watch from him, and it seems like she has a large collection of watches. So I was like, oh, you've been on your serial killer status, huh? I mean, how many people have actually come here to actually steal from you? And how many were people you just assumed were there to steal from you? Like you're thinking, Joe, it's like, oh, you came here, you're going to steal my place from me. He's like, no, I wanted to be with you. Like, he had no one else, and you were someone he made a connection with. And even she was like, oh, maybe if we had met sooner, things could have worked out. I was like, yeah, if they had met sooner, if he had probably made the decision to come try and find her sooner. Because she was like, oh, I figured you would never like actually go out of your way to try and find me. And he was like, yeah, neither did I. But he took that leap. But sadly, it's like, yeah, she's already went a little crazy, already killed people. So poor Joe, like she kept like slicing at his neck. I was like, ugh. Luckily, she tried to like hit him, but luckily the crystal Evie gave him, like protected him in that moment. You go, hey, that worked out. So try to get away from her, but that's a no-go. Then Evie shows up, and it's just like like the moment like she tries to like, oh, like, are you feeling okay? And Evie was like, yeah, why wouldn't I be? I was like, oh yeah, she's got resistance to this because she smokes weed like all the time. She's a pothead. And it's like, yeah, it's like, why? You shouldn't be giving people edibles without telling them. And it's like, ooh, she's like, I'm a connoisseur in this. I know a weed brownie when I know it. And it's like, right, you've been lying to me. So that worked out. And she came to get them, and just him throwing like the hatchet and hitting her in the chest. I was like, oh, she was kind of crazy, so there's no getting around that. So it's like, cool, let's get the hell out of here. And I love that the goat is pissing at the same time this is all happening. Like, cool, let's get out of here. I was like, well, you guys have been locked up most of the time, so like, do you know about? Because it's like, right, they should have killed her, like. So that makes me almost like, because once again, this is still early on, and because, yeah, he's dealt with walkers and stuff, but he's kept such a solitude life, he probably did, at least Joe doesn't know. We don't know if I would assume Evie doesn't know either, because if she knew, she would have made sure to kill Susan before they left, like stabbed her and like destroy the brain, right? That's your go-to move in this world. But it's still like early years, and both of them have probably like kept super secluded, so they probably don't know like, oh, like, people who just die come back. They know, I don't know, it's that thing of like, you don't know how much they know about the rules of this world. Got away either way, and you're just like, I was scared at every moment afterwards, because I'm like, is this going to have a happy ending? Are we going to find out, please don't have some like sad ending or not. It ended up being like a very, like I said, lighthearted ending. But it's like, yeah, I love that he's just kind of like, hey, you came back for me, and it's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, why am I so hungry right now? I don't know whether he said like, this is so dramatic or this is so tragic or something like that. It's like, yeah, that super didn't go well, but she woke up and kind of thought he had left, but he's like, no, I just kind of had a Mother Nature called, so. But she's like, right, like the fact is that we can find, there's probably other people out there too. We can find them. There is beauty in this world. He's like, this is beautiful. And she's like, well, not here exactly with all these dead bodies, but still, it's just like out there. There has to be more, because he admits that she was right. He's like, I didn't live my life. Like he realized that's what's the most tragic thing about it. It's like, yeah, I kind of walked away with nothing. But she's like, yeah, you have someone in front of you right now, and there could be other people out there. Let this be your start to your life. So let's go. They're on the road again. Still no bike, obviously, but they have Skipper, the lamb, by their side. So that's pretty dope. And you're like, the little postcard at the ending, like, with Gilligan like pissing or whatever. And you're just like, that was a really sweet episode. I'm like, now part of me is like, they're lowering you into a false sense of security, because it's like, oh, this is lighthearted and kind of fun, and the rest of it's going to be your typical Walking Dead depressing stuff. Because I'm like, they're anthology episodes, so they don't have to have happy endings. Like, a lot of them probably won't, sadly, But I think there's a lot of, because of the anthology angle of it, you don't have to serialize stuff. You can just tell one-off stories. You can have a lot of fun with it. So I just thought it was kind of a nice way because I was just legitimately taken by surprise by like the kind of like lighthearted kind of fun tone of this episode. You know, it's like, yeah, you just have this lighthearted funness in this backdrop that is this depressing, bleak world. But once again, it's kind of what The Walking Dead does. Yes, there's this bleakness and depressingness to it, but there is always that spark of hope that's still around. So I thought that was kind of nice. And you know, obviously, once again, this is like early days, so you're like, man, I hope Joe and Evie are out there. Maybe they met other people. Maybe they made groups. Maybe they made friends, you know, and yeah, I hope, I don't know what a lamb's lifespan is because, like, once again, it's been, timeline-wise, right now, it's been about, like, what, 12 years? Because that also tells you, too, it's like, this is all before the bombs went off in Fear, too, to time frame-wise and stuff, so it's like, man, that's kind of wild to think about. But either way, like I said, I just thought this was just kind of a dope way to open up the show. I'm excited to see what the next story takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.